The White House Republicans, they want this tax bill passed by the end of the week. What's the biggest hurdle?
Well, they badly want this passed, and they want to see it reconciled with the House before the end of the year. The hurdles are that they can only afford to lose 2 votes. It is a very, very tight margin, and there's very little room for error here. And there's still some concerns by various members about various things. One of the members, Ron Johnson from Wisconsin, a Republican, is very concerned about how pass-through businesses are treated. And several are concerned about the effect that this bill would have on the deficit, that it would add as much as $1.4 trillion by several studies, including Congress's own, over a decade. And that has some concern. And Senator Susan Collins of Maine, who's a moderate, has expressed concern before about the individual mandate repeal of Obamacare that is in the bill. So there's a lot of different things that could turn up the heat for some members. They want to vote, as you said, by the end of this week. So it's a really tight time frame.
Tight time frame. Good morning to you, Jodi. There could be some hurdles ahead. If the legislation does pass through the Senate, what is the likelihood of getting a bill to President Trump's desk by the end of the year? They've still got to reconcile the various bills that are out there.
That's right. The House and the Senate both have to pass the same exact bill, the same exact language. And the House bill that was already passed is somewhat different than the Senate. And so, when you change one thing in this very complex legislation, it can be difficult to make those to reconcile. So it is a hurdle. And the other thing is the time frame. They're talking about doing this, by the end of the year, which is very soon. They break for the holidays at the end of December. So they have something like a dozen legislative days, depending on how you count. And that's not a lot of time. And so there's a lot of things that could happen that could derail it at this point. Although the president badly wants this, he's going to be up on Capitol Hill pushing for this in coming days. They need a legislative win at the White House. They haven't had a big one in the Trump presidency.
Now, Jodi, of course, we're going to get a curtain raiser from Jerome Powell, what he might think on deregulation, what he might think in terms of the U.S. economy. Which avenue do you think they're going to spend more time on during the hearing?
Well, it will be interesting. This is his Senate banking confirmation hearing. He'll still need to go, to the Senate floor. This is the first confirmation hearing he'll be facing. Interestingly, the day after he testifies before that committee, the current Fed chairman, Janet Yellen, she will give what could perhaps be her last testimony before the Joint Economic Committee. And it will be very interesting to parse the differences between what they say, which will give us some indication of what kind of Fed chairman Jerome Powell could make. There's not a lot of opposition brewing, not that we've seen so far. So we expect that he'll give us a sense of how he'll deal with, policy issues going forward. But there could be some interesting questions. There could be some kind of in the weeds, more wonky kinds of questions that come up depending on how various senators, how various members of that committee are feeling on that day. Sometimes they tend to ask very pointed questions. And so it'll be an interesting test of his views when we see the committee hearing this week.